and girls, it's a really bad idea.
It is.
We are not prepared. We're never prepared. We have Meny Karen and Immutable Destiny. And Meny wants to have a word.
Yeah, just like a few things that you were talking about yesterday, basically when Speed was gone because he had that wind tunnel thing going on.
Yeah.
Or what was it, a washing machine?
It's a washer.
Okay, so I'm gonna drop a link and you're gonna copy it to the YouTube chat because you're such a nice guy. And here it is. So
Hey.
Yesterday you were talking something about like how religious people are moral or not, and them that they sort of think of it like getting paid or getting punished for what they do.
Underrating. Some people, like when they talk about like religious morality, it seems that they're operating under a false pretense of like a reward being given.
Okay,
like
so
the notion of heaven.
I put the link that I just found. It should be okay as a basic introduction, at least, to a guy called Kohlberg. If you've ever heard of Piaget, who is rather famous, Kohlberg was his student and he tried to study moral development in human beings. So one of the, I think it's either stage 2 or 3, is when you think a cop is going to come and either punish you or reward you for the stuff you do. So it's a normal step in moral development of human beings. However, some of us go beyond that and some of us don't. So Kohlberg's theory, you can read about it, and then maybe someday we can discuss it, including why it was harshly criticized. Because as a scientist, he completely ignored the content of your what your actual morals are. So you could be a very, very morally evolved Nazi, according to Kohlberg, so long as you had like certain explanations. It's really interesting. So if you want, you can give it a read, and maybe that'll give you some insight into this whole where they stand in morality and how Kohlberg tested out. It's a really interesting subject. It's part of developmental psychology. And another thing, I'm not going to name the name, but you did mention that one of our friends has like issues with having conversations and then interrupting people when they're wrong.
Yeah.
And I remember that he mentioned that he has Asperger's.
Yeah.
Basically, we don't use Asperger's anymore because we don't think in syndromes. We think of a spectrum. But the basics of that spectrum is communication problems. So it's sort of like complaining that a blind man is walking into stuff and stepping on people's toes.
I'm not sure that's the same thing, but
it sort of is, actually. Like I have some lines along the spectrum, though I'm not on the spectrum, and my kid is. If you, for instance, oops, God, this thing's immutable.
Yeah, they happen without much notice.
Oh, by the way, I have a new router and everything, and my internet connection has yet to crash.
Yeah,
so there you go.
Yeah.
Yay!
That's good. We have no wash machine.
Like, if my kid like plays a game and someone changes the rules even a bit, he goes insane. He cannot abide the slightest bit of dishonesty or error or anything he perceives as not 100% true can actually, it's almost like physical pain for him. And he can't handle it. And he's also the greatest problem that they have is with the pragmatics of how conversation works. I still remember us trying to teach my kid how to use questions. He had no idea how questions and answers work. So the best example, when he was I think he was 3, the nurse gave him a test where she shows him the picture of a dog and she goes like, "What is this?" And he looks at it and he says, "What is this?" And she says, "What is it? What is it?" "Yes, what is it? What is it?" So she moved to the picture of a ball and then a glass. And then she gave me a look like, okay, your kid's really retarded and I'm so sorry for you. And then from his own initiative, he started going like, "That's a dog. It has a tail and it wags and it barks. And that's a glass and you use it to drink. But if you drop it, it will break and then you can cut yourself and that's dangerous." And he gave her tons of information because he's really intelligent. But he had no idea how to converse. He had to be taught that. He's now 12 and he's still learning how to converse with people. He's still handicapped in that area. So that's not to say that we should accept every behavior. It is to say that if we can, we should assist someone who has these difficulties and not just criticize them, because the criticism doesn't do anything. He can't just work with it like you can. But what we can do is maybe instruct and show and demonstrate how it's done well, and they can learn rules. That's not a problem. They can learn the rules of a conversation. You just have to find the right approach to show them, and criticizing them is like criticizing a blind man for stepping on everyone's toes, instead of getting him like a stick or a cane or something and explaining to him how to use it in order to stop doing that. So I'm not saying forgive everything. I'm just, let's try and be helpful in a way that is actually constructive. And I think that's basically it. Yeah, there was something about creationism and Christianity, but that's not important. No, that's it.
Okay. So, sounds like a topic for a whole fucking hour or a show. So, I don't know. We'll take a look at the article. I put it in chat and in the description. It's in the video description. So, okay. So, here we are. Let's see. So, we have... what's happening? Hi, guys. Immutable's gone.
I'm here. Immutable.
I'm here. I just muted for a second.
Oh, I just want to know what's happening.
And yet he's immutable. And yet he mutes.
I know.
How does he do that?
No. It's black magic, I tell you.
On October 7th.
I actually studied black magic.
Really?
So did my son when he was like 10. He was really into it. And I'll tell you about that sometime. Anyway, he gave up on it. So on October 7th, David Neff and Smokey Saint had a debate on naturalism versus theism, and it was the only time I ever heard Smokey actually say anything other than insulting people and calling people trash. And he actually put forth some arguments, and I think they're worth taking a look at, so I thought we'd do that today. So how to do this? He has 3 points against naturalism, and then he makes 3 positive points for theism. And I have some timestamps, and should we play them and then comment on them?
Go ahead.
Okay, what is the safe word, my friends?
Foreskin, I think.
I stopped.
Yeah.
I paused. Yep, that's the only thing that works on me, I'm afraid. So let me see here. At 1605, I think is where it starts. but
Whale
I'm not-
penis. What about whale penis? That's popular in certain channels.
It is on the Godless Engineer. It's quite popular.
Have you seen the video that he put out of just that the beginning of his live streams?
The whale
It's like
penis? No.
singing whale music, whale song.
Oh, I did. Yes, that was great.
It's great to fall asleep to.
Falling asleep to whale penises. There we go.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. This is the introduction, I think, of Smokey's part 17-minute opening.
In comparison of competing worldviews. You will notice the topic of the debate has actually avoided mentioning atheism as a worldview, and therefore disarming some of those immediate stigmatized objections without wasting too much time on definitions and factoids about philosophical epistemology. The fact is that at the end of the day, all of us are operating as subjective agents who are attempting to discover objective facts and truth about reality, generally filtering our digestion of information through the presuppositions inside the worldview or worldviews that we have adopted. Any of us could be wrong, which is why we spend the time and effort to actually engage in these conversations, supposedly to test the boundaries of our belief networks and discover justifications or falsifications for what we believe. While a more philosophically honest individual will probably admit a fallibilistic worldview, they won't generally rely upon it to make a justification, only generally as a dodge to accountability of inference or deduction, and usually to avoid the very sensibly justifiable inference that there is indeed a God.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Okay, so I don't get what he's going on about. Like, fallibilism is something that's been well known for a while, and people don't use fallibilism to justify naturalism because fallibilism just says that we can permit for some errors when we engage in philosophical discourse. And those are things that we should try to resolve. It's not acting as an excuse. It's just it's a brute fact of epistemology.
Also, I'm surprised. I want to see how a theist actually applies that.
I do as well, because to my knowledge, in this debate, he doesn't.
Like, forget this debate. Take WLC, William Lane Craig, as an example of a man who might admit fallibility, but will then say that the Holy Ghost is infallible and it tells him.
Well, so he's admitting to, okay, a fallibilistic worldview, but then above where he says we all filter everything that we find during the day, our day-to-day life, right? How often do you think, oh, I'm a naturalist or I am a theist and I have to ground this? Like before I make my coffee, I have to figure out whether or not I can justify.
No, I do actually. My coffee is ground, actually.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
I mean, at what point? So he's kind of suggesting that we filter everything through our worldview on a day-to-day basis. And I don't think anybody actually does that.
No, we don't.
Particularly if you're playing baseball and you got to hit the ball.
In a debate, we do, I suppose.
So,
right? Or I guess in debate, or when we approach a new topic, maybe.
So he's setting up this division between two worldviews is what he's doing, and he's trying to make it pertinent. But how we figure out how things happen each day, I don't think is something that anybody does. Like I'm saying, when you hit the baseball, you do not say, "Oh, I'm a naturalist, so I believe in physics, so I think that the baseball is coming to me, and it's not supernatural." Or if you're a theist, you don't say, "Oh, the ball is blessed."
But will you pray before the game?
Yeah, well, that's a point. You might pray before the game.
Or will you make sure that your bat is okay? Which is more important, the quality of the bat, or did you pray?
Yeah.
So there's something there, but he's taking it to an extreme. Yes, definitely.
Well, I pray before broadcasts.
So you're saying there's no God?
Right. There's no
Okay.
God.
Yeah.
But I pray.
No. I'm saying that this is sort of like proof, isn't it?
What?
Considering the quality of the broadcast.
Fuck you.
Wow.
Oh, no, man. That was a low
Miracles can
blow.
happen.
Oh, no. Yeah, I guess that proves there is no God.
I bet that was like, yeah.
Oh, that was low. I didn't see that one coming, man. Fucking burn.
Hey, I watch you, so what does that say
Okay.
about me, you know?
Right. Yeah. StreamYard found out that in their server room, they actually had their wash machine in their server room, and they were bleeding over into our broadcast. So that's how we ended up with the wash machine noise. At least,
Really?
yeah, that's a theory I'm sticking to.
Ah,
So, yeah.
Well, it's just a theory.
and has
But-
that been objectively verified according to your, what is it, like, perspective? What did he say?
My naturalistic worldview or
Yeah,
fallibilistic worldview.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell he's saying here. While a more philosophically honest individual will probably admit a fallibilistic worldview, they won't generally rely upon it to make a justification, only generally as a dodge to accountability of inference or deduction.
Okay,
So-
I think what he means is, in a very complicated way, when you try and justify your position, then you will pretend you will present it as absolutely true.
Right.
When suddenly you're challenged on it or presented with something else, you will say, "Oh, wait! I'm fallible. It's not certain. I might be wrong." So
But he also seems
actually,
but
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong though, but he also seems to be kind of implying that he thinks that like his inference towards God isn't something like that's susceptible to fallibilism.
well, that he hasn't said that yet, but that is always the problem when you rely. That's what I wanted to say to you with, for instance, morals. You have an ace in the hole. You're always right about morals because God said so.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, let's see. I suggest we move on.
Let's see. So where the hell was I? Let's see. What other comment that I want to make on this? Sensibly, yeah, very sensibly justifiable inference that there is indeed a God, but he admits that's fallibilistic, right? So I don't know. I think he's admitting that, but he has a justifiable inference, and he doesn't think we do. But anyway, I want to comment here, so we're going to have a little foreskin shortly.
As you can see from my choice of title and my position to defend, I am attempting to present a justified case to adopt a theistic determination to the nature of reality. I'm going to begin with 3 parts that are going to be pointing out the fallacious justification of the methodological naturalism paradigm or view of reality.
Okay, so I really want to correct this, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but methodological naturalism is a method. It is not a metaphysical view. It's not a worldview.
No, it
Doesn't
isn't.
the word methodological imply that it's a methodology?
Yeah, it's a methodology, and he is confusing it with metaphysical naturalism. And I was very surprised that Smokey made this error. So-
Well, and he also doesn't, as we're about to see, like when we dissect his 3 points, he doesn't understand what a fallacy is. And
Well,
he doesn't,
yeah.
none of the points he's about to state are actually fallacious.
Yep. Okay, so moving on. Followed by 3 positive.
Followed by 3 positive points to justify inferential theism as a superior worldview or interpretation of reality. The point number 1 I'm going to begin with is the naturalism of the gaps problem. This is one that I actually stress frequently because it is a point of extreme interest to point out that the naturalistic worldview is not built on such solid footing as they say it is. Not attempting attempting to be prophetic, but I anticipate my opponent to point out many specific instances of natural processes occurring and attempting to use this as a justification to infer that any occurrence we have not yet accounted for with a naturalistic solution should be accepted to have a future, yet unproven, impending naturalistic explanation.
Okay,
Foreskin, that's not methodological naturalism.
No, it isn't. That's what we would call metaphysical naturalism.
Yeah.
Methodological naturalism states that there are explanations like to the natural world, but that those explanations are more likely to be natural than non.
I suggest we keep it simple. Speed might believe that God was getting back at him, and that's why his StreamYard wasn't working. But what he was looking at was the mic, the speakers, the server, changing laptops, muting this, muting that, closing apps.
Yep, closing.
He was looking for his methodology was naturalistic. Now he might assume that this is because God doesn't want him to broadcast, but he's still the methodology is naturalistic.
So the thing is that methodological naturalism accounts for only natural explanations of some phenomenon, but it doesn't preclude it to but it doesn't state anything about other explanations of their validity. It's just saying that this is one lens by which we can view the world, and other views need their own justification.
Yeah, but also it's like, what else can we test for? We cannot test for the supernatural. We cannot test for the metaphysical. All we can do is test the natural. So we're not saying what the origins of something is, but while we're checking it in the lab, we're looking at it with methodological naturalism. And you might study abiogenesis and yet believe that God was behind chemistry. That's not a problem.
No, it isn't.
So, okay, a gap. Let's see. So we have animals with fins. And in some of the animals today, particularly the paddlefish, we have found basically wrist bones, primitive wrist and finger bones, tibia. All of that has homologs, right? But they aren't the same shape. And then we go to limbs. So, and we look at limbs, and the bones are extended, and the joints are more sophisticated. They have muscles attached to them. So we have a gap right there, right? So say that we know everything after limbs developed, and we know everything before fins developed. We know the development of fins, but we don't have this fin to limb gap. So we haven't figured it out. So he is saying that if we look and we look and we look and we can't find a solution to this problem, then the naturalist will just say, oh, well, there's going to be a solution in the future. And he's pushing back on that. If somebody says, oh, we know because we figured everything out from limbs forward and up to fins, but we had this one gap. So because we figured everything else out with naturalism, we're going to figure this out with naturalism too. Therefore, I believe in metaphysical naturalism. So he may have a point there.
Yeah, but he wants to call it naturalism of the gaps, and I have an issue with that.
Yeah.
Because the reason we call it God of the gaps, and yes, people use that too much, that's for sure, but the reason we call it that is because when we knew next to nothing, God was the explanation for everything. As human knowledge grew, we found naturalistic explanations for things, and God started living in gaps in human knowledge. Like, we now know, where did life start from? Oh, look, there's a gap in human knowledge, so God gets the gap. But naturalistic knowledge has been building up. You can't say that we have naturalism of the gaps. That's not the same thing. We didn't start with 100% naturalism and then shrunk. It's God has moved into these gaps, which are getting smaller and smaller, by the way, and naturalism, it's not the name naturalism of the gaps creates this false equivalence between these two ideas.
Well, and I'd like to.
Yeah, so go ahead.
No, but I'd also like to point out epistemologically, right? For if you just take the position of God creating things and generating these things, that has it doesn't seem to have any predictive generation, and I say that for the following reason. If I observe some phenomenon, and I ask about its ontology, so I ask, okay, why is this thing here? Like, what causes this thing to be itself?
Yeah, like the men with the nipples that you gave yesterday.
Or, a droplet of water or whatever, right? I can say, okay, well, with the snowflake or with this water droplet, here's this complex mathematical model, and here's kind of a description and illustration of how, these individual water molecules interact on a subatomic level to form this structure. And, but here's a way it could be wrong. Like here's experiments we could do to try and see if this representation of that phenomenon is actually correct, or, if it still needs some work. So there's a way of potentially falsifying it. But like with the God thesis, with the God hypothesis, it seems that all you can do is say, God did it, like that God is responsible for this thing. But that doesn't really give like a particular reason of why that thing like has its structure. You can always point to some phenomenon and say, God did X. It seems that God can be an explanation for everything, which at that point, to me at least, seems that it's an explanation for nothing really. Yeah, if there's something you can't explain with that kind of explanation, right? What exactly does it explain?
And also, from what you said, if we have the naturalistic method, the method again, then we can also make our models better and better, and our explanations can improve and can become more nuanced as we discover more data. Whereas the explanation "God did it" doesn't go anywhere. We have it. That's it. We're done. God did it. We're never gonna get anything better, and no technology comes from that other than maybe prayer.
The important thing too is that, so what I forgot to mention, but that you kind of alluded towards, is that when you take this kind of methodology to study this phenomenon, one approach presents you new perspectives on the information that's already present, whereas one just seems to kind of repeat back like the same conclusion, which is that God did it. And here it is.
And we're done. Don't ask. Also, I would also like to add one more thing, and that is that if we look at probability is in favor of the naturalistic explanation, because up to this day, we have found more and more naturalistic explanations for things that were attributed to God. And we've never gone back. So there's a much higher probability of us finding a naturalistic explanation. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so basically what Smokey is saying here is that because we have this fins to limbs gap, right? And we cannot from that derive metaphysical naturalism. That's not enough justification. So he's correct there. But what he doesn't speak out loud is that nor can you derive a theistic explanation for that either. What he has is he does not believe that fish evolved into crawly land animals. He believes that prior. Okay, so that's his case. We believe that fish did evolve into crawly land animals because of the difference in our views. But we have to go further in order to justify those views, is what he's saying. So I don't think he's completely wrong there. Except
there's another important point that needs to be mentioned too. Because
except as straw man.
Well, later on, what he'll try to argue is that since we don't have perfect knowledge, but theists have God, right? Like this gap in knowledge seems to actually support the Christian worldview more than it does the atheist worldview, and that's a logical error 101.
Exactly.
Just because some proposition is imperfect, or the ability of somebody to justify a proposition is imperfect, doesn't automatically give that evidence towards the other position, right? If I were to make the claim like that, snowflakes do have a particular structure, or snowflakes don't have a particular structure, those are two distinct claims, and just because a snowflake doesn't have the particular structure, I thought it did initially, doesn't prove the alternative hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis still requires evidence of its own in order for you to draw that conclusion.
Well, and the other problem is what I call the endless bucket of naturalistic explanans. You have explanandum, which is the thing to be explained, and explanans, the answer. So in those gaps, we have filled out a whole lot of stuff with Hox genes and the mutations and whatever. But the more we look naturalistically for using methodological naturalism, the more return we get. So what No Direction said here, I don't know what a two
coque, it simply means you too in French.
Oh,
or
okay.
Latin, probably.
Okay, by comparing an argument which assumes the gaps are
Exactly
evidence.
what you just said, basically.
Yeah, and the other drawing on a wealth of evidence trends to make an optimistic inference, right? So we have a wealth of evidence, and that's what I mean by the endless bucket of the naturalistic explanans. That there's how do you pronounce explanans? Explanans. It's explanans. Oh, there's a couple of different ways to say this in Latin, but I put it in chat. But anyway, so all we're saying is, okay, we cannot. So he is kind of straw manning us if we're saying, if we were to use that as a justification for metaphysical naturalism, and we had nothing else to go on, then that is a sort of a weak position, except for what he was saying here. And No Direction puts it, it's the pot calling the silverware black, which is a nice little modification to that old, naturalism and methodological naturalism is silverware because it's working. And they fucking hate that. They hate when we tell them that. It works, it works, right? But
I want to address something Cafe said about the naturalism of the gaps is more an attack on empiricism. Plato ultimately argued that we discovered ultimate reality, what he called the good, what Plotinus would eventually call the one, via contemplation, not through the senses. To quote Aristotle on empiricism, nothing in the intellect unless first in the senses. And I'm sorry, Cafe, but we know that Aristotle was right. Like, we have nothing except empiricism, because even if you try and do stuff like in your mind with your intellect, what you know, what you think is based on your senses, is based on this world that you have been exposed to. You think in the language you were taught, or in pictures that you've seen. When you use your imagination to imagine something, that's the same visual cortex your eyes use. It's no different. When you imagine a sound, that's like your ears working. It's the brain does the exact same functions. So Plato had nice ideas, and they don't hold. They failed, to the best of my knowledge.
Oh, Walker's here. Nice. Get in the stream.
Yeah, he wants to talk about evolution. No evolution.
Walker, hold on. Walker, I've been wanting to have this fucking conversation for a long time now. Where you at?
Yeah, move on with the video. It's already 34 minutes and we're like a minute in.
I know, we can't get too far too fast.
Shut up, you old man. Let's go.
Oh, what the fuck? Okay, let me figure out where I'm at here. Oh, okay. So are we on point number one? We're still on point number one.
They tend to contend that anyone inferring anything outside the realm of the possibility of non-naturalistic processes is being somehow philosophically incoherent or even stupid, while they stand incapable of justifying or making a solid case as to why we have to adhere to this religiously rigid, narrow framework of the interpretation of reality. With each passing year, the scientific community seems to act less and less like an institution of academia,
hang
and
on a second.
more like a political
I'm losing it. Okay.
What's your name again?
We're on a Meny.
Got it.
So, if Smokey thinks that people are treating him as if he's stupid, I see two options. One, the person doing it is a stupid person. Two, Smokey has an inferiority complex and he should do something about it.
I think it's his inferiority concept. It seems like atheists have been mean to him in the past. I think atheists have touched him somewhere on the doll. I don't know. It just seems like that, and that is the tone throughout that you'll recognize. It's pretty interesting. But he's let's see. So, I mean, this religiously rigid, narrow framework of the interpretation of reality. If you are not a theist, you don't have anything else, period. And we are not theists because we have not yet been convinced of the theistic intervention. I'm not sure about you, Meny. I don't know what the hell's wrong.
Yeah, I'm complicated.
I know you're complicated.
I'm sorry. If we go to the sciences, we'll find scientists that are theists, and they still use methodological naturalism when they work. They don't use God in their papers, and God is not in the lab. I had a professor, religious, wearing a yarmulke, and I asked him straight on. He does brain science. I mean, it's like no souls and shit, you know?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, well, when I work, I work.
Yeah.
No God.
And I wanted to point something out earlier, but Kafai kind of crystallized it here. The reason they rejected the senses or empiricism as a primary source of knowledge is because true knowledge for Plato was sought in contemplation, not through some endeavor taken through the senses. Okay, so this is the idea that our rational mind is something that exists separately from the world, and that our rational mind can reason toward truth. And I would deny that, because the rational mind comes from your senses originally. So
Are we reviewing the video, or are we reviewing Cafe's comments?
okay, what the fuck? Okay, fuck you. Okay, I see your point.
Yeah, thank you, Immutable. Party pooper.
What? Yeah,
Just ask him.
fucking rain on my parade.
I will. You're going to take it.
Moving on.
Entity, or dare I even say, a church. You are not approaching us from any semblance of superior intellectual footing by merely demanding we accept your presupposition of methodological naturalism when you can't possibly justify it to the standard that seems to be condomly levied against.
He did say condomly.
Yeah, he means calmly. But let me also object in the sense that naturalism, or any form of naturalism, is by no means a religion. There are no doctrines that we have to adhere to as methodological naturalists. It's entirely possible for us to be wrong, and when we make hypothesis-building models about things that we observe, we're allowed to be incorrect. Whereas if you're incorrect, it's quite a different story, now isn't it?
Okay, wait a minute.
Projection much?
Yes.
Because I haven't seen many naturalists banging on churches and trying to forbid people from praying. I have, however, seen theists try to force people to do what they want because God said so. So I'm not saying that this proves any philosophical points, but Jesus, the projection.
But he says, demanding we accept your presupposition of methodological naturalism. Okay, somebody touched him in a bad spot. Because who's demanding that?
I'd like to know what his starting presupposition, though, is, if it's not methodological naturalism or some form of naturalism.
Also, it's not methodological naturalism. It's metaphysical naturalism that he's talking about constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, get
But
it right.
okay, he got his Christianity from the Bible, right? That came through his senses.
Yes.
Okay, he read that page at a time. There are words on the page. Is that not empiricism?
That is always when people like Saitan, they try to Saitan Brugge and other presuppositionalists, they try to ask them always to get them to that point where they say, how did you get the first inkling of the existence of the Christian God? Because it was through your fallible senses, which you claim cannot be justified. It was with the brain, which you claim cannot justify, be a basis for truth. So they have to. So how did it happen? And that's how you get the presuppositionalist, because it's dumb.
Just one other thing here. Why did he mistake, instead of saying commonly, why did he say condomly?
I think it was just a Freudian slip.
Yeah, what kind of Freudian slip? He's okay, up here he's talking about we're demanding. Somebody touched him in a bad spot. An atheist did, I think.
Who knows? Maybe it's Catholic priests too.
And when do we get to the live stream when we analyze why you keep saying that, Speed? Why you keep harping on that somebody touched him? Why is that of such great interest to you? Would you like to share?
Oh, okay. So I see what you're fucking doing. Yeah, well.
Did you touch him, Steve? Are you the culprit?
Yeah, I studied more psychology.
Okay, a bus driver named...
And my boyfriend is a clinical psychologist. I have to deal with this shit every day.
A bus driver named George wanted to touch me, but I told him no, and he listened to me when I was 7 years old. There you go. That's why I keep dwelling on the doll. Anyway. He ruined my life, man. He asked if I'd show him my penis, and he ruined my life. I was only 7 years old. I didn't know what a penis was.
Do you want to talk about why you call Smokey a snake and use when as your icons when you make videos about him?
Okay, removing Meny from the stream. We're removing you from the stream, Meny.
Okay, so just on with the video.
Okay, so now we're at point number 2. There are 3 points on naturalism. If we get through those, we've done a lot. Okay.
Yeah, so I think we shut down naturalism of the gaps. I understand his point, but probability is with us, and it's a false equivalence. It's not the right expression.
It's kind of a straw man because I do not justify naturalism simply with the gaps. I'm sorry. But I do justify using methodological naturalism on the gaps because naturalism is an infinite bucket of answers. We always get more answers the more we look.
We go by investigate the gaps, fill in the gaps with actual explanations and models, and not just go, oh, look, a gap, great, that means I could put God there and never touch that again. Yay.
Okay, so Scott Duke, hang on a second. Hi, David.
Yes.
I sent you a link, David. I did send David a link.
Point numero dos. Dear God.
What?
Point number 2.
Yeah, we're on point number 2. Moving on.
Us. Moving on to point number 2, rife with assumption and actually lacking positive argumentation. Carrying this forward, I want to point out that just because you can observe natural processes do not give you justification to assume them in every place where they have not been justified or proven. This requires you not only to assume.
Yeah, I got something to say about Smokey here too.
Most people, not just atheists, most people understand that using naturalism, right, has its bounds, and those things apply to scientific knowledge. Most people will also understand that there are ways in which we engage that don't pertain to science, such as morals and such as epistemology and things like that.
Immutable. I knew you were going to say morals, so I beg to differ. Sam Harris wants to claim, that is his claim, I'm not saying it's correct, that science can also handle morals.
I'm a little skeptical on that. I'm familiar with the whole evolutionary altruism thing.
Yep.
I still need to see a little more on that to like really
Okay.
be convinced with it.
I'm just saying that there are those who claim science can and should also deal with morals. So
Yeah, I would say that's
acknowledge such limits.
I would say that's treading on thin ice, and I would need to see more on that before I'm really comfortable endorsing that position.
We had a little bit of that talk last night, didn't we? You
Yeah.
and I, Immutable.
I understand the people that are making those claims, although I think that claim has to be handled with care, and that's a very that's one you have to treat with caution.
Okay.
Yeah, well, what the fuck would I expect from a biochemist?
Move on while I'm chewing my salad.
Chewing salad. Hang on a second. I'm putting Scott's link to a analogical reasoning and methodological naturalism video that he posted. It's in the description, also, and the chat, as you get often on this channel. When I can keep up, what's happening? Okay, so one other thing I wanted to say about Smokey is that, let's see, he says that we lacking positive argumentation, that we don't justify naturalism with anything else other than naturalism of the gaps. When I tried to do that in that infamous talk that I had with Anthony Maurice, I started trying to get them to focus on a seed turning into an oak tree, and they called me pudding ever since and cut me off. And we never actually. So, and Smokey has been railing at me ever since, having not given me an opportunity to explain my method or my justification. He just decided to call me a trash clown and start this big fucking war with me. So he has not heard my argument yet. I do have one.
I don't like philosophy too much.
Yep.
For various reasons. So how about I quote Richard Dawkins on that one? Science.
No, Richard.
It works. Bitches.
Yeah.
And that's a true Dawkins quote, by the way. He actually said bitches.
Good. Okay, let's see. Well-being, morals. Sent you a link, David. Okay, I'm moving on. Where are we?
We're rife with assumption.
God damn it! I keep double clicking.
You have no access to, while oddly stating our inability to provide the equivalent is a detriment to our case in just pure hubris and hypocrisy. It also requires.
So, Foreskin, here he's railing against us asking him to provide positive evidence for his God, and that is sort of a sore spot with them, and that comes from Matt Dillahunty and the whole new atheist movement, where they'll say, well, show me your God, give us some goddamn evidence. And he's claiming that we don't have evidence because we haven't justified our metaphysical naturalism. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
You to abandon justifiable inferences simply to adopt the stance of infinite I don't know until naturalism.
I was trying to comment on it, but I was muted. But what I was going to say is that if you want to think about this like in a very discrete sense, what you can think about is there are two essential models that are being put at play here. One of which says that natural phenomenon are what accounts for what we see in the world, and natural processes seem to be all that there is. That is the thesis of methodological naturalism. However, you can do that, but also say God is the source of all these things. And one thing like that in basic philosophy that we're to be careful with and advised to do is to try and apply Occam's razor, which says that the frameworks and models that seem to use the least assumptions are more likely to be true, although they're not always true. And so when we have this kind of philosophical discourse, what naturalism needs to do to fulfill its criteria is to be able to posit, explanatory frameworks that can explain the natural world, which we can do. But for you to posit something like a supernatural framework, that's fine. I mean, we need some way to be able to confirm whether or not these supernatural events occur. But there should be a justification on the part of the theist as towards why something supernatural needs to be invoked in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Because it seems to be making an unnecessary level of complexity towards this phenomenon we're trying to describe and explain, that being philosophy, or that being the natural world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would my son assume that I made the fried rice that's in the refrigerator right now when he could assume that God did it?
Yeah.
Let's take a favorite example, abiogenesis. How did life start? So
He
the
gets to that.
naturalistic view would be, well, life is chemistry, basically.
Yeah.
So look for a chemical explanation of how it began. That makes sense because it is chemistry. And
just looking for the explanation does not mean that you have ruled out any other way for it to have happened.
exactly.
No.
So when we say that abiogenesis is the beginning of life, we are in a way jumping the whatever you call it. Like we are ahead of ourselves in a way. But
Yep.
my justification for saying that abiogenesis is the most reasonable direction to go is that life is chemistry. So chemistry is logical. He
Yeah.
says, no, you don't have a reason to assume it's chemistry just because life is chemistry.
And I don't know if I'm assuming in advance. I mean, I just keep dipping into the bucket, and every time I dip into the bucket of naturalism, I pull up another idea.
So, I mean, historically, I think it was Haeckel, or it might have been somebody else that brought this up. I'm sure somebody else will murder me in the live chat and remind me who it is. But the contemporary notion of abiogenesis was brought upon by, I think it was either Rudolf Virchow or Ernest Haeckel, or it was a scientist like back in the day, and they were studying
1800s.
Yeah, they were studying cancerous cells, and they noticed that this thing of all life appears to stem from life, except for when they studied disease cells, it became clear, well, if you have perfectly healthy life and it just keeps reproducing, you'll never get something diseased. Well, that means that that all life comes from life, except for the first life, which comes from what they would call a prior matrix. You go ahead.
We even have a Pasteur who who proved that spontaneous generation doesn't happen, but he said, don't take this too far because there is a point where life did actually start from nothing. Sort of, not from nothing, but from non-life.
Yeah.
That did happen at some point. It
Right.
must.
Well, the thing that motivates, and to restate Meny's point, the thing that motivates abiogenesis is that when you study natural systems, so when you study things like biochemistry and like even higher order sciences like neuroscience, what you notice is that it's a very complex and nuanced description of chemical processes occurring in biological systems. And abiogenesis is a collection of physical processes pertaining to chemistry, physics, and geochemistry and geology that try to account for how do these processes accumulate in forming systems which are lifelike and eventually create this phenomenon we call life, which is a very complex question. But it stems from the fact that the way we understand life occurring is that it doesn't occur by means of kind of like this ethereal soul kind of, tampering with the physics or, intervening on the behalf of the mind at some random point in time. From what we can tell so far, it appears to be just chemical interactions and chemical reactions that are operating in a very controlled but also nuanced fashion to create this system we call life.
And I would also like, first of all, Cafe, thank you. Yes, jumping the gun. Thank you so much. I sometimes forget expressions, not my native language. Also, Smokey seems to be saying that when we ask, how did life begin? We should not start experimenting with chemistry before we have a good argument for that. And no, that's bull. Because a scientist somewhere, sometime, went and said, I think chemistry is the answer, and he started researching it. If you think the answer is intelligent design, we'll go ahead and prove that. No one's stopping you. We'll go with methodological naturalism. You go with whatever you go, and we'll see who wins.
Yeah. Well, intelligent design is something that I consider all of the time. I try to figure out how could this have happened, and are there any traces? Is there any fossil evidence of intelligent design?
Oh, please.
So, I mean, I don't rule it out at all. I don't see how it could happen. I don't have any means to. I mean, I don't have any basis for how something could do that, other than there is a possibility that some fucking creatures from another galaxy who evolved through a different method backed a truck up and dumped a bunch of eukaryotic cells in the ocean. I mean, that could have happened, right? And if it did, maybe we'll figure out how it did or why it did or when it did. We'll see fossil evidence.
Well, and I think the great debater Christopher Hitchens made a very good point, and something that was overlooked for a while, or just maybe wasn't overlooked, but it was just never stated formally. And that is, that which is asserted without evidence may be dismissed without evidence, and that's perfectly acceptable as well. There are almost an infinite plethora of options as to how life could have began, or as to, what kind of things could have caused life to come into existence. But the things that we don't have justification or evidence for aren't things we should really be focusing our time on, because it could be that we're never able to fully justify those positions at all. So what we should do is try to focus on explanations that are at least potentially, sustainable, and see, do these explanations work? What do these sets of chemical reactions explain? And okay, now we have that, but how do we bridge this gap from, lipids to, ribonucleotides or things like that? It becomes now an issue of figuring out, okay, we have these individual, very complex little systems that are all doing their own thing, but now the problem is, how do we assimilate them into something that's exhibiting properties that the sum of the parts don't, right? How do you make these, very complex little systems into a system of life, which is far more complex than its components?
This one guy.
What I find funny is that he wants to talk about stuff like intelligent design, and whenever they debate intelligent design, what they're doing is they take evidence that have been found using what exactly? Prayer? No, methodological naturalism. They take genetics and they say, oh, look at genetics. Where did we come up with genetics? Was it discovered in the Bible, in church? Where? No. So you rely on methodological naturalism to arrive at your metaphysical conclusion. But you're still relying on methodological naturalism. You dumbass.
Life is rife with assumption. Basically, every time I reach out for my cup, I just assume that it's coffee and it's there and nobody's, shit in it other than some fucking flies. But when I get out of bed in the morning, I make an assumption when I put my feet on the floor. And we do it constantly. I mean, so life is filled with assumption. Of course, our methodological naturalism is based on assumption. We have to assume, well, if it happened this way, what are we going to get? So anyway, Walking Fish says, honestly, have no problem. I don't have any problem with religious people. Other than that, they spread misinformation. I think that's correct. My biggest problem with religion in this country is that it's gotten in the way of neuroscience mostly. So anyway, okay. So moving on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Scott posted a couple videos. I put in the
by the
description.
way, just the Walking Fish. Walker said that he has no problem with people who are religious as long as they aren't harming other people. So basically, I have no problem with anyone as long as he's not harming other people. But think of the coronavirus of COVID and what we have. Oh, I said the forbidden words. What we have going on now with the Backstreet Boys tour, and how religious people are behaving and spreading this disease. That's a problem. And as a gay man, I can point a few problems with religion that are way deeper than just creationism, which is mainly an American problem.
Yeah.
Oh, look, Scott Duke said what I said. Oh, I love it. There must be a naturalistic cause why we thought the exact same thing.
Okay, No Direction says there's a point coming up here where he contradicts himself.
Woo.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
An hour round. Go.
Go.
Can explain it. Aside from this, if naturalists are being honest, they have to admit that even the very foundational framework they are operating from is assumptive, including along the lines of the uniformity of nature, the amount of faith justified in scientific naturalistic hypotheses, and circular justification for the rules of logic, and as well the uniformity of our subjective sentient reference points. They have no inferential point of reference to justify any of this, but accept it a priori, yet somehow deny to possess any faith in your mental or belief framework. The only argument I frequently...
Okay, the only reason somebody should be making this argument is if they are trying to use presuppositional apologetics, right?
Yeah.
This is somebody, like, this is typical, like, for people that have taken, like, more than a year of philosophy, yes, we understand that our frameworks that we develop have presuppositions, and we understand that there are certain fundamental starting points which we must take based upon, certain things that aren't exactly capable of being justified in the same way normal arguments are. However, what will change those things is evidence that shows evidence that can show if our position is incorrect, or if there are better positions we can adopt that avoid those issues. And as of yet, we hold our positions because we feel that they are sufficient, right?
And might I add that what is his basis? His basis is claiming that there's a God, which has yet to be proven, and saying, oh, see, I am justified and you're not. No, we are honest enough to say that we don't have a justification for certain things. And you're not honest.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference.
A person who has studied philosophy well enough understands that there's a fundamental level of, if you want to call it faith or trust, I don't really care. There is that element in our systems that we adopt that make it so we can't have perfect knowledge. This is something that's not feasible for us to hold on to. But we try our best using various logical systems, and we justify and get around the types of errors that occur later on when we use them to argue with each other. But there is no system that is void of that type of issue. And those issues don't go away if you believe in a God or not.
Exactly.
So I don't understand why he's trying to go this route.
We say that the laws of logic are just what we see around us. They work, they hold. It is what we experience, so that's what we use. He calls that you don't have a justification for this assumption. While he will say, oh, because God made it so. Ah, yes, that's a justification, sure. Whatever.
So he mentions the circular justification for the rules of logic as if we do that all of the time. And this indicates that he thinks either you found logic in God or you're circular, that those two options are there. And that indicates somebody who has never studied epistemology. Because in epistemology, we have foundationalism, which basically presupposes certain fundamental or proper basic beliefs. We have coherentism, which means that everything knits together in a meshwork, which is not circular. A mesh has circles in it, but it's not inherently circular. It's a mesh that holds you up. And then found herentism, which is a combination of the two, which is even better.
Any chance that you can link something leading to those? I've never heard of any of these three because we don't study philosophy here. That's not a thing,
so foundationalism.
Like the word epistemology meant almost zero to me until I started watching YouTube. So
Yeah, epistemology is the study of knowledge and justification, essentially.
What is wrong with my keyboard? Coherentism and Susan Hack, Hack, I think, has found herentism, which is a combination of the two, which is a remarkable. I think it remarkably reflects how we really think. Found herentism. I think I spelled it right. Anyway, those are there. I'll try to provide some links, but there. Matt Dillahunty famously mentioned Susan Hack founded herentism. Then when I tried to have a conversation with him, he said he'd never read the book. So I don't know.
Oh, right.
He didn't read the book. See, he didn't read the book. Well, I read part of the book, not all the book.
People who do not read the books that they own are
just trash
scumbags.
clowns.
They are the lowest of the low. They are.
I know, trash clowns.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Yeah, if you look at my copy of Susan Hack, you'll find it highlighted up to about 1/3 of the way. So I didn't read the book.
Yeah, today clowns are no longer giving out balloons. They're giving out books they haven't read yet.
Right.
Yeah, they make
Okay.
animals out of them instead.
Okay, Smokey's brain would explode if it were pointed out that logic does change. The change isn't simply cumulative, but principles do get dropped or added. Yeah, we've... I guess, are you talking about mathematical logic? We have some differences. Anyway, yeah, and then there's different kinds of logic.
Yeah,
I mean,
and also there's modal logic, which I know.
modal logic, which is
but I
really
don't know
fucked
what
up.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a number of different kinds of mathematical logic, and then there's some really weird ones. And there are different varieties of logic, and we're always working on it.
We've moved past the syllogism.
I have 120 books on logic and I haven't read them all.
Okay, so
fucking-
let's at least listen to a bit more of.
Okay.
Let's not do what we did with the books.
See, if you can call it that from the naturalist side, I tend to recognize it as the ever-morphing atheist goalpost. It is to set unrealistic standards of evidence and stand in falsely justified self-validation with a religious mindset. Saying I don't know isn't actually an answer to anything. And you
Fucking foreskin. Now, David Neff does a really good job in this debate. And he comes back at him on this I don't know thing. But what the hell was it?
Let's
I
keep
don't
going.
know is not an answer. Seriously?
Okay, and we set unrealistic We set unrealistic standards for evidence. We
No,
just
we don't.
want some evidence that a theist did something.
What I would like, and this is the definition of evidence that I use, is that I would like a set of data that is concordant with your hypothesis over other hypotheses, right? So data which, when I examine it, can be exclusively assigned to your hypothesis and best explained by that hypothesis over other ones. I'd like to see evidence that the Christian God, which you claim to worship, actually exists. I would like data that type of thing, right, is present and is manifest in reality.
One miracle, and I'm there. I mean,
If Jesus rose a person from the dead like he did with Lazarus, or if he could make water into wine like in front of me or something like that, you could go down the whole hallucination route, but I'd have some hard time. I'd have a hard time getting over that, right? I could actually get behind that if I saw that in person, right? And
well, if I saw the stars line up and give me a Skywriter message that just said believe, I would fucking go to church this Sunday. I wouldn't go Saturday, but I'd go Sunday.
Yeah, give me a miracle. I mean,
Yeah, give me
and
a
don't tell
fucking
me
miracle.
Jesus didn't do it, because Jesus made plenty of miracles occur in the New Testament. He rose a person from the dead. He healed, he healed completely, like the deaf and the dumb. He turned water into wine. He fed the 5,000.
And where'd you read all that?
The New Testament.
The Bible. That's the only fucking piece of evidence they have.
Yeah, but even they claim that miracles won't occur in this world.
I had some moldy old shitty books, and laying up in the garage somewhere. I could just drag one out. I think most of them are science fiction, but why not?
I put a link in the chat. Anyone can look at it. It's a video by Potholder54 where he takes a miracle that happened in Japan, where missionaries were saved from the atomic bomb by a miracle because they had the Lady of Fatima's rosary, and he analyzes said miracle, which turns out to be somewhat non-miraculous.
Okay. It's a miracle, or is it? Okay.
It's you have to watch it. It's funny as all hell, and it's really good journalism, because that's what he does. He simply does good journalism.
Okay. Potholder. Hang on a second. I'm putting it in the description.
Yeah.
54 OV.
I just want to say, I have evidence of physics. I have evidence of chemistry. I have evidence of biology. I have, in a way, evidence for psychology, sociology. All of these have evidence behind them. What evidence does Smokey have, for Christ's sake? Whenever I speak English, I use Christ and Jesus.
Really?
I'll do that. Yeah. Because you Americans do it all the time.
Okay. Let me see if I can figure out where we're at. I got to get my transcript back up. We're almost at point number 3, I think. Right foot assumption. Go ahead. Should I move?
Yeah. 3 is a good number. It's magical or something.
It is.
Are deluding yourself if you think you are somehow being intellectually superior or philosophically honest.
There it is
It
again.
is simply a statement of your own personal epistemology, which may be faulty as a subjective agent. I also don't actually know, which I actually personally myself as a Christian don't actually, know, which means your stance and your statement is literally meaningless. I don't know isn't an answer. It isn't a solution, and it isn't a justification to those who are using inferential argumentation that happens to disagree with your religiously held presuppositions. It is only a statement of all-encompassing fact that none of us can ultimately know, quote unquote, know anything. But that has nothing to do with what is just or justifiably believed or deduced.
Okay, that's the end of 2. Okay,
so I would like 2 things. One, enough with the inferiority complex.
Yeah.
You feel like everybody's trying to be superior to you. When you are being stupid, you are being stupid. I can't help you with that, but we're not trying to patronize you, and I'm sorry if it appears that way. Second, I would like Smokey to tell me how many bathroom breaks Jesus took during the story of the Gospels. And if he answers, I don't know, well, that's not an answer, is it?
Oh, good one.
I don't think I haven't read the New Testament, I admit. But I don't think that bathroom breaks were mentioned. And you know how I know that? Because it actually appears in the Never-Ending Story. The
Wait
hero
a minute.
actually asked his Bible teacher.
Was all that water into wine? Was that all water?
Well, we don't know.
We don't know. How many bathroom breaks did he take?
Exactly.
Well,
And according to Smokey, you're supposed to have an answer for, well, everything. Because I don't know isn't an answer.
Well, and the thing is, I think he said something about, I don't know, also, doesn't reflect any quality of being intellectually honest.
Right.
Excuse me. Yes, it is.
Of course it
Because
is.
and
what is intellectually honest to state and to assert is those things which can be justified in some form or another by evidence, typically.
I think
Right.
David does a really good job of cutting him up on this I don't know stuff. later
Yeah,
on.
and the thing is, right, claiming to know better, like claiming to have some explanation for this type of thing, like so claiming to have an explanation for abiogenesis to this conversation means that you have evidence of how this thing occurred, and that is expected to be demonstrated, right? Although we don't have that knowledge, nobody fully understands how abiogenesis works as a theory and how it could create complex life, or simple life for that matter. So asserting that which is not known as if though you did know it is being intellectually dishonest.
And
saying you don't know is a perfectly acceptable answer because it's the only honest answer that can be given the current state of facts.
Yeah.
He's also trying to grab the stick by both ends. On the one hand, he's saying that we think we know everything. And on the other hand, he's saying that we answer, I don't know, and that's a bad answer.
Right.
So
good point. Yeah. And what is this? That happens to disagree with your religiously held presuppositions. What in the fuck? Will somebody please explain to me why theists keep using the word religion on us like it's a bad thing?
Well, they don't understand the core of what a religion is.
God.
No, but he's asking a different question. If you say evolution is a religion in a derogatory way, but you're a religion, why are you degrading religion?
Right. That's what I mean. It's like, what in the hell are they
As
trying
an
to say?
example, when geologists started claiming that the Earth was way older than what people think, Lord Kelvin said, I'm a physicist, and I can tell you that geology is a soft science, not a hard science like physics, and the Earth is this old and no more, because it couldn't be. And then they found out that there's such a thing as radioactivity, and Lord Kelvin is an idiot. So don't try and claim that you have, it doesn't work. I'm not sure. I had a point. I think I made it.
Yeah, they're just, I don't know. What do they mean by religion when they say that about it? I just don't get it. I'd like them to explain it to me.
Yeah, when a scientist degrades other scientists, that doesn't usually work very well for them in the end. So why are you using religion as if it was bad? So usually, Immutable, the answer is that, Immutable Speed, you were bringing it up. The answer to that is usually that if they can show that science is a religion, well, then maybe we shouldn't be teaching science in school. Or we should be teaching religion in science class.
Along with it. They're just trying to, it's almost like they're trying to bootstrap or pull their religion up by its bootstraps to be equivalent to science when they say that we're trying to, And it's almost like they're shitting on their own idea.
He's basically saying, yeah, I have a presupposition called God. You have your own. So, and again, he's doing it to Kokwe himself.
So, Cafe mentions here, I've never agreed with that. I'm not sure what. Because if you don't know what would convince you, then how do you necessarily know what you're rejecting as God to be able to call yourself as an atheist? Well, what would convince me, we talked about it, is if I looked up in the sky and God took a bunch of stars where there are no living things and rearranged them to say, believe, or give me some particular message, or if some fucking supernatural thing would happen in front of me that would be like repeatable, like a bunch of people saw it, or I could verify it somehow, or it was so stunningly real and eidetic that I could accept it, well, then I would believe. So I do know what would make me believe, but nothing else is going to make me believe. I'm not going to believe from reading a fucking book or from hearing somebody come up with a persuasive argument. So
okay, but Cafe mentions that I was going to mention Matt's answer, and he mentioned it in chat. Matt's answer is, well, God knows, right? And I actually think, as smart alecky as that answer is, it's actually a good one.
It is.
If God wants to convince me, I'm sure he'll find a way.
Well, it's not just that. It's the fact that a perfect being such as a God, which contains all knowledge, right? would understand what the falsification criteria that I particularly, or that any individual would accept as evidence for its existence, right? As something with perfect knowledge that's not very hard for God to do at all. And it'd be perfectly reasonable to say that God knows what type of things would fit that bill, but not for a human, because humans aren't infallible. But God is infallible, at least as defined by Christian doctrine.
Yeah, so Cafe brings it up, and I saw this Matt Dillahunty Atheist Experience episode where this guy said rearranging stars would still not convince them because it could possibly be a highly advanced alien technology. But here's the thing. If there's an alien technology that can move fucking stars around, then that is very close to a god. Because that's what you guys believe.
Cafe, right? It could be the devil. It could be sorcery or magic, and it could be anything. What would convince you? It's a very hard question.
Well, it would convince me that there was something super powerful that was intelligent that could actually put his fingers on the universe and do things. And that to me is exactly the theist God. That's the God that I don't believe in.
What convinces me, I can tell you that when it comes to science, what convinces me is statistical significance. It's what I see under a microscope. It's when I can predict the behavior of people, or when I can say, okay, this person has these symptoms, I'll give him this chemical, and the symptoms will go away, and they actually do. That convinces me in science. So I don't know, start with prayer working maybe, or something like that. And I'm not an atheist, and I still have no answer for that question.
Is this English? 8 good dudes, peace.
Gotta go, dudes.
I deciphered it.
All right, gotta go, dude.
Good dudes, peace.
Yeah, it's supposed to be all right, I think.
Oh, you kids are so fucking funny these days. I love yous.
What, you know what GDG is? Come on.
I do now. I had to figure it out. I didn't fucking. It isn't something they taught me in school. Get it?
Well, yeah, that's because you have presuppositions.
I do.
Yeah.
Well, that's because we didn't have religious training in school. So, Okay. So now we're at point number 3. And this point number 3 is, let's go to it. Hang on a second.
Moving on to point.
Okay. Point number 3 is the unjustifiable implication and the underdetermination thesis. Sounds impressive. Ready?
Let's see what
which is the final point of this critique of methodological naturalism, is the unjustifiable implication and the underdetermination thesis. It is frequently heard that atheists have no burden of proof and no reason to justify the rejection of theistic claims. They do this in a desperate stab at any semblance of philosophical accountability.
Okay, stop.
Okay.
Foreskin.
We were just talking about that.
What does this have to do with methodological naturalism anyway?
This has nothing to do, but this does show Smokey's ignorance. It does show Smokey's ignorance when it comes to logic, though, because according to formal logic, the burden of proof rests upon a person making the positive claim. In this case, a theist makes the claim that God exists, right? That claim requires evidence which is indicative of that proposition to be true. An atheist which says, I don't believe you, which is all atheism has ever claimed, right?
Yeah.
Requires no such justification because it's not claiming something about the ontological state. It's saying that what you're proposing, I am not convinced by.
Another way of posing it is saying God is innocent of existing until proven guilty.
Yeah, precisely. It's not saying God doesn't exist. It's saying, I don't believe the proposition that God exists.
Yeah, it's also Russell's teapot, but basically we're saying we have the null hypothesis. the null hypothesis is, I don't know if there's a God or not. So unless you can actually show evidence for its existence, then we're in a problem.
Yep, pretty much.
Okay. Tafard. Gub. Pista. What? What's
What?
happening? Hi. That's internet shorthand for Tafard. Internet shorthand for take a flying fuck at a rolling donut.
Oh, God.
Oh, I thought it was the raccoons typing.
Gotta go, boys. Peace to y'all. Okay, moving on. Hang on a second. Wait a minute. There was something. Underdetermination thesis. Okay. No burden of proof and no reason to justify the rejection of theistic claims. Okay, justifying the rejection of theistic claims. They have to justify the theistic claims, and I don't know. And then he when he says is a desperate stab at any semblance of philosophical accountability. That is ad hominem fallacy right there.
I want to ask a simpler question. Doesn't Smokey reject Islam and Judaism and Buddhism and Hinduism and shamanism and animism and a whole lot of other isms and shitisms based on what? On what evidence? So basically, he would say, I have no evidence that they are correct. That's it. That's all he has to reject all of those. They have not met their burden of proof as far as he's concerned. So it's like we say, we reject one more God than you do. Just one more.
Yep.
Descartes' evil daemon is an example of underdetermination at play, but applied to knowledge and experience in general. Fucking no direction knows philosophy. He insists he doesn't. Or he's not a philosopher, I think he said, but goddamn, he is.
Who, no direction? He's
yeah.
scaring me. He's using big words.
He uses big words all fucking time.
I don't like big words.
That solely the mind exists in some individual entity among entities, as though only your mind were true. The true mind, ground of being, isn't, and I don't know what the fuck that means. Sorry. Okay, shall we move on?
Yes.
Unforced.
There is actually an implication carried forward from what they have adopted inside their belief network. They judge reality through this lens, and it is generally the lens of methodological naturalism, which they seem to strictly apply. Which they seem to strictly imply that we must also operate from. Well, now you have crossed a line. If you propose this is the superior method to digest data, you have now adopted the burden of proof to substantiate or prove your naturalistic paradigm and justify why it should be used in every single available instance. Denial of this is just grasping desperately at avoiding philosophical honesty to maintain a double standard against the opposing theistic worldview. And this brings
foreskin. I suggest circumcise for a safe word to start the video again.
No, it's just when we're done commenting, we'll start it again.
Okay.
But again, like this comes back to the first point that we already addressed. Most people that argue, like using methodological naturalism as a framework, are not using the type of naturalism you're describing, which is metaphysical naturalism. And most people recognize that naturalism has its limitations in terms of what we can observe from the natural world.
Not all of us.
So I don't get it. Like if you're arguing with somebody who claims to like be well read and well studied on this, there shouldn't be an issue.
Let's see. What the fuck?
Also, when Smokey is sick, does he go to the doctor, or does he say, "Wait, there is it's underdetermined. Maybe I should be a Christian Scientist and go pray instead of going to the doctor. Because, hey, you don't know, it might be a demon that's making me sick and not a virus, right? Hey.
So I think he's basically conflating two kinds of questioning. Like methodological naturalism would be the go to the doctor case, but how did it all happen, or why are we here, or where are we going? Those why questions are the questions that he's talking about, because Christians are obsessed with those questions because they believe they have an answer to all of them. So they believe solidly that they have an answer to all of the why questions in the biblical scripture. And they kind of project that we're saying the same thing, that we haven't answered all the why questions. And the truth of the matter is, I don't even fucking believe in why questions. I think they're stupid.
Yeah, but he also says that if you answer, I don't know, then that's not an answer. So if someone says, why are we here? And you dare to answer, well, I don't know why we're here. Maybe there's no reason. I don't know. Then that's not an answer. That does not answer anything. And you must have an answer for that question, and you need the Bible. No, that's not how it works.
Okay, no direction as a comment
Even
here.
if I can't argue this point any better, that's not how it works.
Okay, I'm not sure if I understand entirely because I am getting tired. This is where Smokey accidentally contradicts himself. The underdetermination thesis argues against particular assumptions. So underdetermination is that there are more ways in which something could have happened. There are, like, whatever evidence we have, it is undetermined as to what caused that evidence, basically. At least that's the way I see it. What do you think, Immutable, Meny?
Yeah, that's what I understand it to mean.
Okay,
There could be all kinds of possible hypotheses, but that means, I think that's maybe where the contradiction is, that the naturalistic hypothesis is as valid. So he can't say naturalism of the gaps and then say underdetermined.
Right.
Because if we go with religion, well, why didn't we go? I think am I understood here?
Well, the thing about, if he's talking about metaphysics, any metaphysical system can explain what we have right now. Anything that you think up, like if you conjure up a brain in a vat scenario, I can say there's a brain in a vat. Let's see. Here we have another installment from No Direction. Maybe we should have No Direction in here. Contrary to Smokey's insistence that methodological naturalism lacks argumentation, but the response to the problems that are determined is argued. All right. Okay. Fuck it.
No Direction. I'm reading you, but I'm not understanding you. So maybe try and restate that one.
Get your butt
What
in
he's trying
here.
to say is that underdetermination is solved by arguing for the premises like that are put forth. So essentially, it's trying to simplify via Occam's razor, which theses are more rational to be used than other ones, if I'm not mistaking it.
Yeah, we've got to make
we
some.
can't do that, or we don't.
We have to make some assumptions.
Yeah,
I think so.
Anyway, I put a link in chat. No Direction. If you want to come in here, and he gets into the underdetermination thing next, so we could play this. So circumcised.
Okay, but I think we should wrap it up soon.
We're going to, because we're almost at. Let me see here. Yeah, we only have about 2 minutes left or so. So.
Okay, let's finish with this then. Yeah.
Okay.
Brings me to my final part of my final point of the fallaciousness of methodological naturalism, showing the inconsistency of claiming this to somehow be a superior intellectual perspective, and that is the underdetermination thesis. This simple fact of nature completely undermines any naturalist's falsely constructed concrete confidence in the hypotheses of science. In short, this states underdetermination is a thesis explaining that for any scientifically based theory, there will always be at least one rival theory that is also supported by the evidence evidence given. And that theory can also be logically maintained in the face of any new evidence. This is important because not only does it point out the false overconfidence of the naturalist position, but it now leads me to my primary points for a positive case for theism, starting with...
Foreskin. So, 2 points, very quick. Number one, he claimed that the arguments used for naturalism are fallacious. No, they are not. You have not demonstrated that.
No.
The second of those claims being that the underdetermination hypothesis somehow undermines science as an enterprise. No, it does not. What you are essentially stating is that alternative hypothesi exist. Yes, that is true. Alternative hypotheses do exist, which can explain the data equally as well as the current theory. Although the reason they are typically not accepted is because of the assumptions that are used within those models, and the fact that these assumptions are not necessary to explain the same data. So
Occam's razor again.
Right. So there is a rationale why we do not use these other theories in terms of trying to explain that data.
Oh, but he claimed we had no rationale.
Sorry, wrong again.
Right. So he kind of starts talking about like theories in science, that we have alternative theories that would account for the same evidence. And of course you do more experiments and then you rule one of those out. But he's suggesting that his idea is something that we can't rule out because of underdetermination. He's also saying that naturalists falsely constructed concrete confidence. I don't know if naturalists have concrete confidence so much as he implies. Yeah. Other than that,
we admitted to fallibility. Now we're not.
Yeah, fallibilism is something that we can all adhere to, but now he's switching it so that we're non-fallibilists.
I mean, also, what is he saying that? Let's again take the example of abiogenesis because they love that one. Let's say that we do actually find the answer to how life could come about out of chemistry, period. So he says, even if you explain it to the fullest, I'm still going to claim a designer and you can't do anything about it. Okay. Cool. Go ahead. I don't see the problem.
All right, so time for his 3 main arguments for theism.
Yep, and we're going to break here and take a look at those positive arguments or whatever. So anyway, and I definitely need some sleep and some food, so because I'm not thinking anymore. Well, Mind broken.
I think it's been conclusively shown that he has failed in every possible way that he's able to fail.
He failed with a lot of words.
Well, he's failed in terms of not being able to understand the proper position, conflating methodological naturalism with metaphysical naturalism, and just not understanding the justifications that we use to ground or to try and justify methodological naturalism. So, great. This boils down to Smokey doesn't understand how we ground things, and therefore they're false.
Okay, so No Direction offers this. To understand the thesis, consider Einstein's relativity versus the ether theory. Both are consistent with
Occam's razor.
Something in addition to the experimentation is required to choose between them.
Right.
The principle of parsimony.
Yeah.
Which is Occam's razor. Go with the parsimonious explanation that demands the fewest assumptions.
Right. And also invoke assumptions that allow for that don't require special exceptions for something to occur.
But when it comes to this theory, none of us have concrete confidence. I mean, not concrete confidence.
No, it's not
maybe
100%.
Concrete, not granite.
It's not 100%, right?
No,
that's what it means to operate under fallibilism.
Right.
Yeah. If Einstein taught us anything, he showed that Newton was wrong. And Newton, that's like no way. Newton couldn't possibly be wrong.
Well,
Yeah.
what Einstein showed us that's really important.
Oh, whoa, stop.
Go ahead.
We always conveniently overlook the fact that William of Ockham, the developer of Occam's razor, was a theist.
Doesn't matter.
Razor was to razor that pointed to divine simplicity. Well, this is where we say, well, lucky for us, Occam didn't know what an amazing tool he had invented, and we can use it for other purposes than what William of Ockham intended us to use it for.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if it was a theist who invented it, it doesn't matter.
And he's
right.
dead.
Once that mechanism is put forth, it may be used by anybody because it is a logical tool, right? Theists are not the people, nobody, not even, atheists who invent philosophical constructs like Hitchens' razor should have, the say-so as to who gets to use what technique. Because once something is put into the public sphere as a means like to engage intellectually with somebody, that tool becomes accessible to anybody who seeks to continue and persist with that conversation. So I really don't care if he was a Christian.
If I went and said to Smokey that I don't need evidence because I believe in biogenesis and that's it, so Smokey could hypothetically answer, what is presented without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
Yeah.
And then what would I say? Oh no, that was suggested by an atheist, so you don't get to say that.
Yeah, how pedantic of an excuse is that?
No,
Yes.
I also want to mention that only theists use that argument. They use it always, mentioning which scientists were theists as if that should prove something. And I'm sorry, the only place where you find like Newton putting God into his theory is where his theory broke.
It's the same bullshit with people that go after AA, because AA, went to an AA meeting and a bunch of people were talking about God, and they're in a fucking country where 80% of people believe in that shit. So naturally, if you go to a coffee shop and you hear people talking about God in a country where 80% of them are talking about God, what the fuck did you expect?
So,
that doesn't mean that coffee has something to do with God.
Speed, you should find a way to get in touch with Shannon Q and discuss AA with her, because she's very opposed to the idea of a higher power.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and she has problems with the AA method, model, whatever.
Yeah, I did a modern day debate with somebody from the Atheist Experience of Boston back in January or last December. And I don't know, 2,500 people watched it. But anyway.
So I would suggest that you find a way to contact Shannon Q. You know who she is, right?
I do. I was a Patreon, but then it got a little expensive, so I had to back off. But I think I still participate, like, to some point. I think I'm still a Patreon. I'm not sure.
So maybe you should have a conversation with her. Maybe call her show or something.
Yep. Yeah. And William of Ockham is dead, and he has not risen. That's all we need to know. It's like the idea of universal rights was proposed by a slavery apologist doesn't impact the idea.
So I would just like to say to Cafe, it's not that we overlook the fact that he was a theist. It's that it's completely irrelevant.
Yep.
It's like saying, oh no, things fall down, and Newton was a theist, so there.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, gravity doesn't belong to Christianity, as far as I can tell.
Oh, do you listen to SFB mod Joel? He's constantly talking about everybody involved in science has been a Christian.
Really?
And a creationist. Yeah, everyone.
Might I mention that we rely, for instance, on optics and algebra, which are both Muslim in their origins?
Yeah, but those things aren't real, right?
Let
Optics.
me also mention that a very influential mathematician, Pierre-Simon Laplace, he's responsible for a mathematical transform called the Laplace transform, named after his honor, but also was responsible for a few techniques that are used now in physics, like the Laplacian operation. Laplace, when he was asked about the question of a god, he responded famously with, because the question presented to him was, well, why don't you, well, what's up with this? Like, why don't you, entertain the idea of a god? And he said, well, I have no need for that hypothesis.
I love the way that Mortimer81 put it. He said, it's not necessarily that physicists think that there's no God. It's that if there is one, he's unemployed.
Yeah. Well, and if it is the God, it probably isn't the God of Christianity.
Also,
Listening to them,
since I have to do this for my people, for the pride of my people, was Einstein a Christian? I can't recall.
Einstein was Jewish, as far as I
he
recall.
was Jewish. Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, but he was kind of with you, Meny, but he wasn't really. He didn't believe in God.
Of course, he was sort of like maybe kind of a deist Spinoza thing.
Yes, Einstein described his own position as being, if you were to categorize the kind of God I believe in, it would be most akin to that of the God of Spinoza, the God of harmony and unity, like mathematical beauty.
He kept them very murky. He was very anti-religion, that's for sure. He hated religion.
And Cafe will go on and on about Spinoza and Einstein and panentheism and how they really believed in God. And it's all bullshit because they believed in God in the same way I do.
Please, because Einstein once said that God doesn't roll the dice, or whatever that quote exactly is. Oh, look, he said God. Let's quote that.
Yep. And there were some other things that he said in a life interview that, indicated that he was basically, he thought religion was okay. I don't know. I mean, he was with it in a lot of ways, but he didn't quite believe in the theistic God that people entertain. The God with a mind. He didn't believe in the fucking God with a mind. So.
Yeah, so I just want to point out, no, not all scientists were Christian. Not all were even theists. Especially not as we move on in time to the 20th century. So, could we stop with that whole they were Christians? Because it's like bull.
Who gives a shit? Algebra. Where did that word come from? Sounds like Middle East to me. Algebra. Algebra.
Yeah, algebra.
Yep.
the man, algebra. That was his name.
Yeah, the one is a fucking universe, Cafe. Get over it. It's not like a mind.
No.
Okay, guys. So let's end this bloody thing.
Yep.
So, I want fried rice.
Cafe, I still want to talk with you. You haven't answered any emails.
Who?
Cafe.
Yeah, he hasn't. Yeah, what the hell, Cafe?
I wanted to kill him, and I'll forget about all the stuff I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
Don't make me sad.
Yeah. I wanted to ask him at which point when you take psychedelic drugs, at which point of the experience you feel whom you should kill. Who are the infidels? When you take psychedelics, when do the infidels and other people that you should hate come into the picture? Because all religions sort of tell us who to hate, right? So I was wondering, for instance, when that comes in, when you have a psychedelic experience and you experience love.
I'm not sure if he's, I don't know what kind of an animal he is. He's hard to pin down, I'll guarantee. He's a hard one to pin down. He likes to...
All right, are we ending this thing or what?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, God, did you see what No Direction said?
Which one?
The majority
of Republicans, when polled, would like to see the teaching of Arabic numerals banned in schools.
No shit. Holy Christ. Wow. I wouldn't doubt that. You know, I've got a feeling, you know, this whole thing about executing homosexuals, which some of them kind of go for, if fundamentalists were in power, they would execute us.
Well, we would return back to the Dark Ages.
Yeah, for doing what we're doing right now, they would put us on a stake and they would actually burn us alive because they get off on killing and burning.
There's the famous story of Galileo, who performed an experiment and he asked the bishop to guess which object is going to hit the ground first. And then the bishop had him on trial, not because the bishop guessed wrong, but because of it is blasphemy to question the bishop.
You're finally
to perform an experiment instead of taking the bishop's word for which object is going to hit the ground first.
Yeah.
You're roboting a little bit.
You are roboting for the first time during this entire thing. So your router's probably, you wore it out, Meny.
Yeah. I told you I got a new one.
Yeah, you wore it out already. You're going to have to go get another one.
And thank you, Zohar Neil, who gave me that router.
That was the first time that you roboted. Anyway, okay, we're going to end this. We'll see you guys. Goodbye, everybody in chat. We're ending.
Bye. I had a great time. Thank you, guys. Thanks to everyone in chat. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.